Hello, True Health Seekers, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Today we have back with us an amazing guest. I absolutely love it. It is a very inspirational and motivational episode that will give you tools to further you in your success in every area of your life, including health. So I'm very happy that you're here today listening to this, because I feel what Aaron Keith Hawkins has to share is applicable to anyone, to help them to overcome things that have stopped them in their life, to help them to finally achieve that success they're looking to achieve, and also to increase their level of joy, satisfaction, peace, and happiness in every aspect of their life. And who doesn't want more of that? I wanted to let you know that the Institute for Integrative Nutrition has just launched a brand new program. They've successfully taught for, it's close to 25, maybe even 30 years now, health coaches. They've been around for a very long time, and they've been teaching people how to be health coaches for a really long time. And for many years, actually, they've been teaching online. I think since 2012, and in like online years, that's sort of like dog years. It's probably like 100 regular years. And they run classes every few months. So the class that is launching now is a brand new class. They've developed an accelerated 6-month program. Normally, it takes a year to be a health coach, and they originally designed the program so that busy working moms or dads who, are so busy taking care of themselves, their career, their children, their parents, their family, they're just taking care of everything and everyone, but they only had about 20 minutes a day for an entire year to dedicate to becoming a health coach and then launching a successful health coaching business. And they fine-tune that program, and it works really well. But then there are us out there who could maybe dedicate an hour a day, 40 minutes to an hour a day. Maybe you have a career, but you don't have kids yet, or maybe you have kids, but you realize that they still take lots of nap time. So you know that you could fit in about an hour a day of work. Then you'd want to do the accelerated program. That means that you'd be launching your health coaching business in a matter of months and launching it successfully. Because when you take the course with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to become a successful health coach, you actually launch your business during the program, and you take on clients during the program. So by the end of the program, you have already established an income. It is very exciting. If you want any more information about it, you can go to learntruehealth.com/coach, and you can actually sign up for a free sample class. I highly recommend doing that, because then you can get a feel for what their program is like. I loved it. It was life-changing for me. And if you love helping friends and family to dial in their health, both emotional, mental, physical health, then this is perfect for you. You can just Google IIN or the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, give them a call. Make sure you mention my name and the Learn True Health podcast, so Ashley James or the Learn True Health podcast, because I actually have a deal with them that they will give you the deepest discount possible in January. I asked them to give my listeners the best possible deal, and so they will honor that. And just give them a call, get some information from them, see if it's right for you. Now, they also have a payment plan, which made it really affordable for me. So don't let money stop you. If this is something that you're really passionate about and you want to help people and you want to become a health coach, don't let money stop you. And don't let time stop you either, because they do still have the year-long program. It's only 20 minutes a day, roughly, that you would need to dedicate to that. Or you can do the accelerated program. They just launched it, and so enrollment is closing in a few weeks for that one. So you'll want to give them a call and check it out. Excellent. Well, I just so love you guys and appreciate you, and I'm really glad that you're on this journey with me today to learn from Aaron Keith Hawkins. Enjoy and have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 263. Well, it is such a pleasure to have back on the show Aaron Keith Hawkins. He was with us for, I believe we did a good 2 hours last time. And that was episode 260, so just a few episodes ago. And we were just really getting in, I mean, the whole episode was good, but we were really getting into the good stuff when it was time to wrap up. And I thought, you know what? We need a two-parter. So welcome back.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm serious when I say I'm so flattered and appreciative that you would have me back on to continue this conversation. It was a blast last time, so I'm happy to be back.
Well, I feel like it's my pleasure because I get to hang out with you, and you're going to cheer us all up. So
yeah,
I think I made a joke about how I was going to publish it on a Monday to make Monday feel like a Friday.
Yes.
And
you did.
I'm probably going to publish this on Friday. So we're going to make Friday feel like a Saturday. I don't know.
There you go. That works.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, for those who didn't listen to episode 260, in a really, just very brief and impactful paragraph, could you sum up your bio? What do you do and why do you do it?
Yeah, sure. I'm a podcaster and author now, a professional coach. I do business and personal coaching, like life coaching is what people like to call it. I really don't like that term, but it just sounds, it's like saying self. But yeah, I think of myself as a transformational coach, helping people get from point A to point wherever they want to be. And that's pretty much it. I got here as we talked about before. My traditional career is as a police officer. I'm still a captain at a New Jersey police agency, and I had an incident in '09 where I collapsed. I thought I was dying of a heart attack. Wound up spending a couple of days in the hospital. Lived, but realized I had a ton of regret because as good as life was, I realized I was settling in, and that started about a decades-long journey into studying personal development and human behavior and psychology. And that led me to the desire to want to teach what I was learning, because everything I was learning as I was going through this process of wanting to do more, everything I was learning was completely transforming my life professionally and personally. And I realized I love to teach anyway. So I knew this was going to be my jam, and this is what I was going to be involved in. And that's where I'm at today, doing what I do.
And you're so blessed. My dad died of his first heart attack, and I know if life had just made that, given him sort of like, this is your chance, this is like, we're giving you a second chance, I know he would have really ran with it. He was the kind of person, when you gave him a second chance, he really made it mean something. And I can imagine he would have probably done a very similar to what you've done. It really does shock us to our core when we're faced with our mortality, and we realize, we only, it's as sad as it is, we only have a short blink of a moment in the grand scheme of things, and it's up to us to make the best of it. And I really feel that helping others is the most fulfilling and rewarding thing that we could possibly do. And human connection, right? That just reaching out, connecting with someone even that we didn't think that we had anything in common, or someone of a different religion, or a different from a different country, or speaks a different first language. Just reaching out and connecting with the people of diversity, and discovering that on the inside we're all the same. We all have the same heart. And I think that that human connection, expanding our human connection, creates that fulfillment in life. But you were left sort of struck, going, oh my gosh, my life is actually filled with regrets, because I've been just kind of living in the gray zone of life. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's sort of like when someone says, how are you doing? And you go, I'm okay. That's like, we get comfortable in this gray zone of life, go to work, come home, feed the kids, go to the gym, go to work, just the same routine all the time. Maybe we go on a vacation once a year. But if we purposefully don't do anything that challenges and scares us, then we're living in this comfort zone that becomes purgatory. And so we gotta jump out of our comfort zone and do stuff that like scares the pants out of us, that challenge us, right? And then you really feel alive. I mean, I'm not, you don't have to jump out of airplanes, but public speaking, right? Is some people say that that's the number one fear. So like, join Toastmasters. But you help people to become excellent in both their personal and professional life. So you help them to see their blind spots,
Yeah.
You help them to eliminate the barriers that they've created in their life, and the excuses and the victimhood that they may not even realize they've been carrying around with them.
Yep.
You help them to see that, and then you help them to set up a life with intention and purpose, so that they can just feel amazing about their life, and that they don't, if they end up being faced with their mortality, that they don't have any regrets, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's funny. I sort of I give people what I know I need. If that if that's one way, that's probably the best
It's
way
kind
I
of
can
like
put it.
Christmas
Yeah,
gifts.
yeah. It's funny because you mentioned, you mentioned living in this gray zone, this comfort zone where life was fine. You know what the sad thing was for me in hindsight? Life was, I mean, really good. Like my wife was phenomenal. We had this beautiful three-year-old
She
daughter.
still
I had
is,
a
though, right?
Still is beautiful. Yeah, she's 12 now. It's hard to believe she'll be a teenager next time
No, I
around.
mean
But
your wife is still phenomenal.
oh no, she's older than 12. Yes, my wife is. My wife and I have been married for 22 years, and she's still amazing, and our daughter's amazing. And it was funny because life was so good. It was good. And what I realized, that the cruel thing is, if I could use such a word, that a lot of times when life is good for people, like they have the staples, like the marriage is good, and the kids are good, and the career is good. You, like you said, you just kind of settle in and you sit on the couch and you're like, that's it. But the sad thing is, most people whose life is honestly good, a lot of times they feel poorly inside. Whether they admit it or
Mm.
not, they feel like something is missing. And really, the biggest reason is because they're not evolving, they're not growing. And if we're not evolving and growing inside, we're going to feel like we're dying inside. And
Mm.
that's one of the first things I realized, is that this process of growth and just doing new things, experiencing new things, like you said, connecting with more people, it is the reason I wrote. I just got finished. We talked about briefly. I think when we talked last time, I was just wrapping up my book. It's done now. My first print copy will be in the mail tomorrow as we speak. But I
Nice.
wrote a book on influence. It was geared to. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's who it was geared for. But it's really for anyone, because the book is completely. I talk about, even when I talk in the book, I refer to business, and I also refer to life a lot. But I truly believe that that connection that you were speaking about, Ashley, is the most important thing to allow us to succeed in life and in business. Because if we don't know how to connect, and if we're not actively willing to connect with people in a genuine way and express ourselves and allow them to express themselves, things get really tough. And influence is always happening. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But yeah, totally love helping people transform. It is therapy for me. I am not a therapist at all, but when I am coaching people and helping them see those blind spots, like you said, I love it because it helps me become more aware of myself. And it's kind of a two-way street. It's almost unfair how much I enjoy doing it.
Well, it's funny. I was just talking to my husband about that. It's so easy. It comes so easy to him to
Yeah,
build websites and to figure technical things out, like how do you integrate a payment system, a payment portal with a website, and how do you
yeah.
integrate, an email system with like all that. Like it's just so easy. He does it in his sleep, and he can figure out like how to do you know a, some kind of security certificate on the
Hmm.
website. I mean, it's just all so easy to him. And he said that he's recently said that to me. Like I think it was yesterday. He just goes, it's so easy. It's fun. It's like not
Yeah,
even work. And I'm
yeah.
like, well, I'm glad it comes easy to you, because he does all my techie stuff. And he says it doesn't feel like work. He was kind of almost like complaining, like it doesn't feel like work. He doesn't really feel like he's working. I'm like, well, you are working, because otherwise we
Yeah.
wouldn't have websites. So you're doing a great job. And when you get a career where you get so much fulfillment out of it, there's that little voice in your
Yes.
head that goes, I'm getting paid to do this, like almost
Hmm.
guilt, like should I be getting paid, because I'm having so much fun and it
Yeah.
comes so easy to me? Shouldn't I have to work hard for money? and
Yeah.
and and he's brought this up with me before, because he ends up getting so good at it that it doesn't feel like work. And then when money comes in, he's like, I don't know if I like actually earned this. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, you did, because you're good at it, and you're
Yeah.
you're on your path. This is how life's supposed to be. It's
It
supposed to be
is.
fun and easy, and you're supposed to be, paid for doing something you actually enjoy and that brings you like by the end of the day you feel so proud of the work that you did, and you can see the work that you did, and you can see the impact it has. And if we could all figure out the career that leaves us more energized at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Some people are exhausted, like just
Mm-hmm.
physically drained, and all they want to do is go home and binge TV. And I've been there, or
Sure.
binge video games. Like I've been there, and it's just the work is exhausting. If work is draining us
Yeah.
emotionally and mentally and physically, then we're probably not on our life path, and we're probably not living. You know what I mean? Like you when
Yes.
and I worked at a company, and I believed in the company, and I put in 100-hour weeks
Mm.
for months on end in our high season, because it was a training company that trained people to be practitioners of neurolinguistic programming. So
Yep.
I was one of the managers. I really believed in it, and although I was physically spent at the end of the day, after like just basically from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, I was on for work. I Because we were putting on these trainings, so it's like when the students are coming, you've got everything's got to be
Yeah.
ready. But I was physically exhausted, but emotionally and mentally, I was on a high. It was hard to even go to
Yes.
sleep. Because I was so fulfilled
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
it. And so it's like that's where I want everyone to be. I want everyone, all the listeners, to get to a point in their life when they feel this incredible level of fulfillment around their marriage or their
Yeah.
partnership or their being a parent, or whatever physical relationships they have, and then spiritual relationship, the relationship with themselves, the relationship to their health or their body, and to their career, looking at
Yeah.
all aspects of their life, and having that by the end of the day they might be physically spent because they really just they went out and lived,
Yeah.
but they got a more energy out of it. They got more like charge out of it because it was so fulfilling.
Sure. Yeah. I totally empathize with your husband, like feeling guilty for even getting paid for something that's just so enjoyable. You mentioned public speaking earlier, and I do keynotes. I just did one, I guess a couple weeks ago. I did a keynote speech out at a casino out in Pennsylvania for an attorneys conference. And it's funny because I had a flash of a thought like that when I was done, because I had a blast. I mean, it's weird because I'm normally in most environments, believe it or not, I'm very introverted. I usually get energized. I need my time, my alone time.
Mm-hmm.
But I absolutely love speaking in front of crowds and sharing. I get so juiced from it, and it physically drains me. Like I'm exhausted when I'm done, but I'm like floating out of the room after I get to meet with people and shake hands and all that kind of stuff after the presentation's done, and then I get paid for it. And I'm like, this is just insane. And trust me, I've been on both sides. Obviously, I've been a police officer for a couple of decades. So I understand, that sometimes work is work and it's not always going to be fun. But to your point, Ashley, I think it's unfair in our society where a lot of people still have the belief that work is supposed to be work, and that means it's supposed to be
It's supposed to
unenjoyable. And
suck.
it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so untrue. It's so unfair because hopefully, when we live long enough, we go through seasons. So what we did and started out doing that we enjoyed, it doesn't mean we have to do it for the rest of our life. We're allowed to transition and
Mm-hmm.
change. And I think what like I was mentioning earlier, when people get into that good mood, if they're not going through any evolutions, like naturally, as your life progresses, you should be getting interested in other things and trying new things. And if we're not, that's when things start getting stale and kind of getting kind of feeling redundant, because we are by nature, one of the needs that we have as human beings is some novelty. We need novelty. We need things that are new and new experiences. That's why movies have sequels. That's why musicians are always coming out with new songs. And we like to have that progression and newness and freshness and the feeling of progress and, like you said, purpose. And if we don't engage with it somehow, even if it's not by changing careers, by doing something new and exploring, that's one of the biggest mistakes, most common mistakes that I see people make, and it's certainly the one I made for decades before I wound up getting slapped in the face with my health scare and rattled me to the core. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know that for most people, if nothing comes along and shakes them up, or someone doesn't come along and kind of shake them up by sharing their experience, which is why I feel obligated to share mine. Um, yeah, they can spend their entire life just feeling good. And that's not a way to live. We can do better than that.
I want them to feel awesome.
Yes, we should be feeling amazing
Yeah.
and feeling like we're totally vibing and excited to wake up in the morning. And that may sound cheesy, but it's the truth. It's certainly doable.
And it's kind of it kind of seems backwards, but by putting yourself in new situations and getting kind of scared, like putting yourself out
Oh
there,
yeah,
like take salsa classes, like whatever you're
yeah,
afraid of, like that. It may sound like it would be stressful,
yeah.
but it actually is incredibly healthy
Yes, it is.
to challenge ourselves, to put ourselves in, like, so just think of things that you've
Mhm.
wanted to do but you've been too afraid to do. So I'll give you my example. I have wanted, and it's been like 10 years, I have wanted to try being a raw vegan. Like, just I just want to try it
Mm,
for a few weeks. I'm not saying I'm going to become a total like a crazy person with like this, because it's like, like you have to be, I mean, you have to be kind of crazy to be a raw vegan, but I've always wanted to try it, but I've
yeah,
always been afraid of it. And so I
sure.
decided that I'm going to commit to 21 days. I mean, I'll see.
Wow.
Like, I might give up on day 3. I don't know, but I have to try it, right? I mean, just because I'm saying I'm going to try it
You have
doesn't
to.
mean, doesn't mean I'm going to stick with it. I'm just going to, because, I don't think that if you try a diet and you don't feel it's working, or you start getting like negative health effects, then you should stop just because you committed. You need to like reevaluate
Sure.
and recommit to something. So my ultimate goal is health. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm like, I want to shake things up.
Hmm.
I've been like cutting out meat. I've been afraid of doing, and I know it sounds weird. Just like someone's afraid, like an introvert might be afraid of going to a salsa dancing class,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
asking the boss for a raise, or you know what I mean, or
Yep.
asking that girl out. Just something you want, but you have been holding yourself back, and so
Yeah.
yeah, so I bought a book, and the
Nice.
book's actually, Amazon just texted me, it's arriving today, so
Nice.
I'm gonna read the book and do it. And and the second I committed, I got like the fear turned into excitement, and that's the
Yes.
thing, is that the fear is really, because the fear is actually us just worrying, like, what if I fall flat on my face? What if I fail? What if I, like all these what ifs.
Yeah.
But the second you commit, that can start to melt away, and then you're left with like, whoa, well, what if this happens? What if I become a really good salsa dancer? What if I,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, what if I feel even healthier and happier? Like, whatever your what ifs, you can start turning those kind of negative self chatter in your brain about the what ifs into the good stuff. So the fear can very quickly turn into excitement when you commit to doing something that you've been afraid of doing.
Yeah. For sure.
Uh,
Yeah. Because I mean, the truth is, what if this is amazing?
Right. Yeah. I love that question. What if this is amazing? And isn't it interesting? I think we talked about this a bit last time, that the questions we ask ourselves can
Yes.
sometimes be the
Totally.
most powerful things. Like
Yep.
I know, like Aaron Keith Hawkins could talk to me for 2 hours, right? But
Yeah.
but he could ask, and that could be really impactful. But he could ask me 3 questions, and that could change my
Yep.
life.
Yep.
And it's because it's in the question that has us dive deep into ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about. It's funny. I got interviewed. I guess I think it was a few days ago. I was on another podcast, and after I told my story about my collapse and my time in the hospital and that things changed, and he said, he said, okay, you have to tell me this, because obviously you said your life has changed drastically and gotten way better since that day. He said, what did you start doing? And actually, it was exactly what you just said. I told him, I said, yeah, I said, the best way I can put that is I started doing a bunch of stuff that I felt like it was something I wanted, like in my gut and my heart. It was something I truly wanted to do, but it scared the heck out of me. And I just started doing it. Every time I felt like something, I was drawn to it, but scared of it, I just did it. And little by little. And what happened over time is that the initial feeling of fear, which is that physical reaction where that that the amygdala in the back of your brain starts sending those chemicals surging, and it gives you that instinct of fear. But when you develop the habit of recognizing, like, okay, standing on this in front of the stage and speaking to people might feel scary, but it is certainly not dangerous. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it is not physically. They're not. Unless you're speaking in front of a crowd of bears, you're unlikely to be injured. Like, seriously, like, what?
Sharks with
Honestly, what is going to
lasers.
happen?
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? So you may be bad at speaking. Who hasn't seen a bad speaker or a bad comedian or a bad presentation? You will not be the first or last, and nobody's going to care. So it's really not that bad. So when we start embracing that, for me, for sure, like you jumping into this 21-day challenge of veganism, I'm just going to say it's 21 days. You're not allowed to quit.
Well, I was like letting the listeners know, like, because what if a listener like decided to do the keto diet for 21 days, but
Sure.
on
Yeah.
day 10 they had a health issue come up,
Yep.
right? It's like,
And that is a good fear.
it's
It's a good fear.
it's just to know, like, I'm
Yep.
committing to 21 days, but if the diet ends up causing a negative thing, I'm going to talk to my
Yeah.
doctor. I'm going to see like my naturopathic doctor who's really well versed in diets, and we're
Mhm.
going to recommit, make an adjustment, So I think with like, for example, let's say you're training for a marathon and you commit to
Yeah.
running a mile a day, but then you twist your ankle. It's like, okay, now
Yeah.
it's not that you stop. It's
Yeah.
that you recommit. You go, okay, well, I've twisted my ankle, so now I'm going to follow a therapy routine, and I'm going to maybe go to the gym and pump iron and not use that ankle until it's healed. Like, you just
Yeah.
recommit, right, to a new
Sure.
plan. And so it's just like when you're in a sailboat, you have to tack, right? You have to
Yeah.
go in like a zigzag motion to get to your goal. So although I'm committing to 21 days, I might come up with like bumps along the road, and that doesn't
Yeah.
stop me. It's just a matter of recommitting, and that's why I just want listeners to know, to have that flexibility, because I would hate for them to just give up instead of recommit and keep going.
Yep.
Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
so that's what I meant. I'm not saying,
Yeah.
oh, it gets so hard and then day 3 I quit. I'm not. That's
No.
not.
Yeah.
That's
I was
not.
teasing you.
No. Yeah. No. Totally. It's going to be more like, if some major health issue arises, then I'll have to make adjustments. But I'm committing to 21 days because the book is a 21-day vegan plan,
Nice.
or raw vegan plan, and it's
Yeah.
perfect. It's springtime. It's really easy to get all the fresh produce local, and I know I'm crazy, but I think you have to be a health nut. So
Yeah. Yeah. And the truth is, having one of the things I tell people, and I get so annoyed, not annoyed, but it bothers me when I see a lot of the Instagram posts or social media posts where everybody's screaming about being fearless and have no fear and just say no to fear and all that kind of, the overly brave quotes that get thrown out there. But
yeah.
it's so ridiculous, because the truth is, and I tell people all the time, having some quality fears are necessary. Like you said, if somebody drastically changes their diet and after 3 days they're just physically feeling depleted, well, that's probably a good time to not necessarily quit, but evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just about awareness. Like, the idea of doing something fearlessly is ridiculous. The point is, we own fear. Like the fear that we have, it's actually a tool. It is our personal tool to be able to reflect on whatever it is that the fear kind of triggers us to take a look at. And the truth is, most of the time, and I know that and I don't mean to bash people that encourage people to be fearless, because the truth is, most of the time, our fears are a bunch of BS. The stuff that most people are scared of, like, the public speaking, and scared to try something new, or to try a new vegetable or something, or afraid to ask that person for the first date and that kind of stuff. Those fears are silly because they're not actual dangers. But it doesn't mean that we should be completely ignoring or just living with reckless abandon. It's really about being more aware, is what tends to help.
I love that Disney movie Inside Out. I think that's what it's called,
Yes.
where it's
Yeah,
like,
I
listen,
love it.
fear, like fear, like, let's say fear was your aunt, right? Or just
Yeah.
give fear like a person. Would
Yep.
you do everything your aunt ever told you to do? No. Like, you would like take her, advice under advisement,
Yep.
along with your mom's advice, along with your dad's advice, along with your brother's advice, like along with your friend's advice, and
Mm-hmm.
then you would make your own decision, right?
Yes.
But a lot of people, all of us, at some point in our life have taken fear, like let's say our aunt, taken
Mm-hmm.
fear, taken fear's advice and then been like, okay, I guess we're not doing that,
Yep.
okay. That and so it's just we need to go, well, what does joy have to say? Like what is
Yeah. Yes.
what is like all the other parts of me if I want have to say. But
Sure.
fear also can be an indication if we like want to do it, but then there's a little fear. Like that's actually I get because I'm crazy like that. I get kind of excited when
Yeah.
I think of something, right? Like okay, I I have this dream with my husband to find and restore an old Vanagon camper, like the
Oh, nice.
1989, 1990 Vanagon
Yep.
camper. I mean, they're amazing. And out here in the Pacific Northwest, they're everywhere. Like we see
Yeah.
5 of them a day. Like they're absolutely everywhere. And travel across the states with our
Mm.
son in this Vanagon camper, like doing homeschooling when he's a bit older, and that scares me so much. Like the because
That's
I mean,
awesome.
but at the same time, that fear isn't going to stop me. The fear
Sure.
is like, okay, well, just like I'm gonna take fear under advisement. Okay, fear, what are you worried about? Well, I'm worried about burglary. Okay, well, okay, so now I'm worried about burglary. So let's make a list of all the things I can do to
Yep.
make sure we're safe. Okay, fear, what else are you worried about? I'm worried about running out of gas. Okay, great. So we're gonna have a jerry can, attached to the
Yeah.
vehicle. Okay, what else are you worried about? Fear. Oh, I'm worried about a vehicle breakdown. Okay, so we're gonna buy AAA. What else are you worried about? Fear. And so we can use fear to like
Yeah.
kind of go down the list of everything that may or may not go wrong,
Yeah.
and then handle it. Like so we don't
Yeah.
have to just say, oh well, I have fear around it, I can't do it. But
Yep.
use fear as a tool to allow us to prepare, and there's a big difference between preparing and lamenting, right? But we
Sure.
we tend to think we're preparing by lamenting about something that may happen,
Mm-hmm.
but we just prepare, and then you can go, okay, let it go, because we're fully prepared. We've got everything and we can just let it go. Do you have any guidance or advice to help people to once they've already, let's say they're totally prepared, but their mind keeps kind of the inner self talk keeps kind of going to the negative. how,
Yeah.
how do you help people like stop it, like stop the negative self talk?
Yeah. You know what? Give me an example, and I'll do this real time. We'll kind of walk through it.
Okay, negative self talk might be like um thinking about their physical appearance, right? Like
Sure.
they're going to the gym, they're eating healthy, but they're constantly worried that they don't look good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's my thing. I tend to be like, what's the end game that the person is thinking of? So, in other words, somebody may say, I wanted to lose this 20 pounds, 30 pounds, but no matter, the old expression, I've tried everything and nothing works. And we tend to throw around that word everything a lot. But the truth is that the fear of it not working is usually the fear of it not working fast enough, or fear of the fact that it's working isn't noticeable enough yet. Um,
Mm.
it's the truth. We're in a very fast paced society, and I trust me, I've been there, done it plenty of times. I've been in this example. I've been through it plenty of times where I wanted to lose a certain amount of weight and it wasn't coming off fast enough. So I get frustrated, scared, thinking my body was broken, and no matter what I did, the weight wasn't going to come off. But usually it's about judgment. What are other people going to say about me? And two, how do I feel about myself? And the truth is, one of the best things about um, focusing on your health and the fact that you want to lose weight is to remember the fact that the reason that you're doing it is because you actually do love yourself. As much as you beat yourself up, as much as you complain about how you look, the truth is you love yourself. That's why you want it in the first place.
Mm.
So if that's true, if you love you, then what would you say to the you that you love? What would you say to another person? Like you used the example earlier, Ashley, about, an aunt. If you had an aunt that was constantly berating themselves and talking about how they're broken and everything they try to do doesn't work and it's just no use trying to lose the weight. Well, if it's your favorite aunt and she's done everything for you and has basically kept you alive since your childhood, how encouraging would you be to her? And it usually when I'm working with somebody, I bring them around to the point. I usually bring them around to their own values. And most people have really phenomenal values. People value empathy, love, patience, trust, curiosity, all those things. But for some reason, when it comes to critiquing ourselves, we for some and I look, as much as I love working with people and helping them get back to the point where these values come to the forefront again, and they start doing what's actually valuable to them. For the life of me, it just baffles me that we so easily forget our own values. And you see where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you value love and if you value patience, if you write these things down as things that are important to Ashley, things that are truly values at your core, Ashley's values, those things would probably be on the list. And when I work with some, I tend, that's usually where we go, not right away because I try to ease them into it. But we usually wind up at values. And if you value patience and if you value curiosity and if you value love, then, you don't judge or critique somebody you love. You support them. And if you value patience, then you exercise patience. And one of the best ways to have more patience is to exercise curiosity. Okay, obviously, like I joked earlier when I said people usually say they've tried everything, especially when it comes to weight loss. And the truth is, a lot of times they tried a diet, usually for a week, and the 20 pounds isn't gone, so they're freaking out. So we usually go to, okay, what have you actually tried? Like, how much are you tracking? And I get really, over a course of time, I get really granular about what was actually done, what was truly actually attempted, and how much was it tracked, and why are we doing it in the first place, and who can we inspire by creating a plan that will make this last long term. Because one of the biggest secrets to anybody out there that is a coach and works with anybody, one of the quickest paths to serving your client is to convince them to serve someone else with what they're trying to do, because we will do 100 times more for somebody else than we'll ever do for ourselves. So
I love it. I love that
yeah,
you have them sort of take their inner self-talk
yeah,
and then apply it to someone else. Like, okay, would you talk to your favorite aunt that way? Like, would you
yeah,
talk to your mom that way? Would you talk to your best friend that way?
yeah.
It's so true. We have the most abusive relationship we have is the one with ourselves.
Oh gosh, it's so mean. We're so mean to ourselves, and I do, and I kind of. It's funny because I wind up guilting people into. They almost like apologize as if they were mean to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
but they get. I love it when people get apologetic about how they've been treating themselves, because if somebody called them out for calling somebody else, a pig, or not being able to get anything right, or you know what I mean, like these horrible words that you see people use on themselves
Mm-hmm.
that they would never dream of using on another person. It's really, if we reflect on that, we'll realize how acceptable it's become in our society. I mean, we're definitely in a lot of good ways. We're becoming a society, and sometimes it gets a little bit overkill. But as a society, we're becoming more aware of how we treat other people and the fact that people need to be treated with dignity and respect. But we need to catch up with that when it comes to how we treat ourselves. Like, it should be
Mm-hmm.
just as unacceptable to call ourselves, you know, fat or gross or a loser. It should be just as acceptable or unacceptable to say that about ourselves as it is to say that to someone else.
Oh, I
And
agree with you
when
totally.
when we get there, when we allow ourselves to get there, and trust me, don't get me wrong, it's I this is a practice, something I got to practice every day. when I start getting down on myself about something I didn't do good enough, something I didn't say right, didn't, you know, whatever it was that I didn't do good enough, I got to remind myself it's really a challenge for me to talk to myself like I would talk to somebody that I'm supporting, coaching, loving, caring about, and I want to see him win, and only using those words on me, and it really is a game changer. But that's to put in a nutshell the coaching when I work with somebody. Is to remind them of what is valuable to them, and make sure they're exercising those values, pardon the pun, exercising those values on themselves, especially the patience, especially the curiosity, especially the unconditional love, and then pile on top of that, the value of sharing their experience and having it be of benefit to someone else, whether it's a spouse, their kids, their coworkers, doing it in honor of someone else. I've ran one half marathon in my life, and I did it for my dad. I did a cancer awareness. I did a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society, and had I not done that, uh, I think at mile 12 out of 13.1, I may have just farmed it in and called an Uber to get me through that last mile. But I wasn't. And, I'm a pretty big guy to be running even a half marathon. I'm like 6'4", I was probably about 230 when I ran it. So I'm a pretty big guy, lugging around a lot of weight doing this half marathon, but I wanted to mail it in. But what made it absolutely unthinkable to stop wasn't the fact that I wanted to make myself proud. I mean, I really wasn't that interested. My feelings would not have been hurt if I didn't finish, but the fact that I had made a promise to do this for my dad, who was gone, that changed the game. So, to the point of this about people who have this fear of not being able to accomplish something, whether it's weight loss or finishing school or starting that new career, remember what you value, and exhibit those values in yourself. And then I implore you to be of service to someone else. Make it about someone, including you, but make it also about someone else. And that makes it a lot easier to keep going and find ways to get it done. Because we'll find ways to get it done when we know somebody else is going to benefit from something.
Isn't that amazing? That
Yeah.
we're more likely to run that last mile when we know we're doing it for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Than when we're just, I mean, like, I know that there's part of our human natures to be selfish, but there's this even greater part of our human nature to strive back when we think we have nothing left. We
Sure.
dig even deeper
Yeah.
to be able to run that last mile for something that we've committed to, and often it's for someone else, or for a cause outside of our selfish needs. And so it really does speak to that as humans we have a really beautiful quality inside us.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to tap into that,
Sure.
like you said, your value is you're essentially saying your values are your why.
Yeah.
Your values are your motivation. I mean, and then in NLP, when we elicit values, we ask the question, like, why is that important to you? Like, what is important to you, and why is it important to you? Because your values are your why.
Yeah.
And so you become, like you're saying, become in touch. So let's say you're setting, for me, it's the 21 day going raw vegan, and the vegan I can do in my sleep now, apparently. My husband, man, he was the biggest meat eater. Like, if you told me a year ago my husband was going to be vegan, I would have laughed so hard.
Oh,
I
wow.
would have laughed so hard. He said his joke was, I eat vegans daily, because he's like, he'd have whole meals of just meat. It's like I had
Oh
to
my
I had to
gosh.
say, I'd have to give him vegetables and say, you're not getting your meat until you eat your vegetables. Like, seriously, like, you can't have your pudding until you eat your meat.
Oh my gosh.
And now, like, starting January, in the beginning of January, he goes, no more meat. Like, he has learned just as much as I have from all the interviews I've done. He said, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's been months, and he's like,
Yeah.
I don't ever want to go back. I'm super happy. He's got tons of energy. He's happy. He's healthy. He's getting all the protein he needs because if you're wondering where protein comes from, where do the cows get their protein? They get it from
Sure.
vegetables. They get it from
Hmm.
greens. So grains and greens. But anyway, raw vegan is like on a whole other level. And
Hmm.
so I have to dig deep to find my motivation to to get through this 21-day challenge.
Yeah.
And so, that's the thing. If we can challenge ourselves, if it's public speaking or taking salsa dancing lessons, or I use that as an example because I had a past guest who described that his biggest fear was taking dancing lessons, and so he actually
Hmm.
did it, and he was the only guy, and he ended up having a blast, but he was so in so much he was in paralyzing fear that he
Hmm.
would fall flat on his face, and that was part of his personal growth journey, was that he did it anyway. And it turned out it was a blast, and all the women were super kind to him and nice because he was the only guy there, and they all got turns dancing with him, and it turned out to be like, no one tried to kill him. There wasn't, like you said, it's scary, but there's no threat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not like life threatening. And um and so we have to find something we're afraid of, but we want to do it. Like, we want to do it, we're
Hmm.
afraid of it, commit to doing it, and then discover what our why is, what our values are around that. What's going to motivate
Yeah.
us to keep going? What are we going to get at the end of this challenge? And so that's a great example
Yeah.
of one way that we can get outside the comfort zone. I know we want to talk about, you've got a really cool system where you're going to teach your
Sure.
four laws of pure success. One thing before we touch on that, um you said that it was a really big game changer when your clients shift their self-talk and all the communication with themselves and about themselves
Sure.
to have patience, love, and curiosity.
Curiosity.
Is that what you
Yeah.
said? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you
Curiosity was one of them.
explain that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. What it boils down to, and one of the ways, because there are times I'll work with a client just for a day, and which means we got to move, like we kind of got to accelerate the process. And one of the fastest ways for anyone to make a rapid change is to focus on, not on motivation or just pushing through. It's really about identity. And I'll give an example. If somebody tells you if somebody tells you that you can run a marathon, you may or may not believe it. But if you convince yourself that you are a marathoner, period, that's who you are, it completely changes the way it feels. It totally feels different. Like when I trained for this marathon, or for the half marathon, one of the first things I knew, fortunately I had the benefit of some coaching hacks, if you will. One of the first things I decided, because I truly thought it was insane to even do it in the first place. One of the first things that I realized was like, okay, this is it. I'm a runner, period. And from then on, I owned that identity. Like, it wasn't even a
Mm.
question. I'm a runner. I'm not some guy who's trying to run a half marathon. I'm a runner. What does a runner do when he wakes up in the morning? Oh, he goes for a run.
Oh, I love it.
And
It
what is a
becomes
run?
part of your character.
It is part. It be you. Whatever it is that somebody wants to accomplish. The fastest way to make that happen is to own it before you even do it.
Mm.
That's why parents can get up at 2 in the morning and feed their children with in a half coma without even thinking twice about it. Are you kidding me? Like, think about that. Think about how insane that is, that these rude babies that we have dare
Oh
to
my
wake
god.
us up at these weird hours in the morning. What would we say to somebody who called? If somebody calls your cell phone at 2:30 in the morning just to chat or to see if you want to grab a bite to eat, you would throw the phone through the wall. But when our children do it to us, when our babies need us, sure, we may be tired and we may be grumpy, but we do what we need to do as parents without question. Why? Why do we do that without question or hesitation? because of who we are. We are
Mm.
parents. When you are a parent, it doesn't matter what time it is. So, to use the example, to go back to the example, somebody struggling with weight loss being fast enough, well, stop being somebody trying to lose weight and
Oh.
just be a healthy person.
Oh.
I am healthy.
Mm.
I'm a healthy person. I eat things that will fuel my body. I eat things that will make me feel good. I exercise so that I feel excited, energized, vibrant, so I can get through the day. So I'm there for my wife. So I'm there for my kids. So I'm there for my peers. So I can go through the day enjoying life instead of loathing whether or not I lost a pound today. Just be someone who is healthy, and the rest will fall into place. When you mentioned earlier asking questions, the questions jump out at us when we choose our identity. What's a healthy person eat for breakfast? What do they eat for lunch? Either you'll know the answer. If you don't know the answer, then you'll be Googling it, because if that's who you are, you'll figure it out. I mean, there
Right.
certainly is no shortage of free healthy recipes online. We couldn't get through them if we wanted to. So it's not, the information is not the problem. Motivation is not the problem. The trying and the struggle and the challenge isn't the problem. For most of the time, the sense of identity, the thing that we are claiming to be, is what makes the complete difference. So to bring it full circle to what you were talking about with being a person who is loving and being a person who is curious, and all those values that we were talking about, what would a person who holds those values do? That's when the answers start jumping out at you. So if your values is to
Yeah.
be loving to others and yourself, then would a person who is loving to themselves call themselves names because their particular diet isn't paying off as fast as they want it to? Of course they would.
Mm.
Of course they wouldn't. They would love them anyway, and they would get curious and say, okay, what can we try? Let's look at our caloric intake, our nutritional intake for today, and see what we can adjust or tweak, and give it a couple weeks and see what kind of results we get, because I'm a healthy person. So it's the long game. It's not, vacation is next Tuesday and I need to purge myself of every pound that I can. That's not self-love. That's punishment. There's a big difference.
You hit the nail on the head. That is the most impactful thing I think I've ever heard. I mean, and I've heard it in,
Thank
in
you.
in other in other iterations, but the way you said it, I think, was the most impactful. That so for example, if there's a student listening and maybe they're in high school or college and they only get C's, right?
Yeah.
And they're struggling, they want to get better, and so now they change their identity because their belief system, they've been
Yeah.
fighting a belief
Yeah.
system. They've had an internal belief system that they're a bad student, or they're bad at
Mm-hmm.
learning, or they have learning disabilities. And so then they every time they're in a new semester, they apply themselves at the beginning, but then their belief system kind of kicks in, and then they're fighting
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah.
because their belief system is, I'm a bad student. So what does a bad student do? Well, a bad student
Sure.
watches TV, or a bad student like plays video games, or a bad student, you know,
Fails tests.
fails tests and doesn't
Yeah.
study or doesn't hand in assignments or whatever, right? So their
Yeah.
behavior, because our behavior is a direct result of our belief system,
Sure.
and
And this.
our belief system is influenced by our values and our
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah. And the biggest truth to that, or the what is often the unnoticed truth to that, yeah, I can speak today, is that belief system is usually, most of the time, running on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't even realize we're doing it. So
That's
that
part of
bad
living in the gray zone.
Sure, it's part of habit. Like, our brains, habits are an amazing thing. They give us such a huge benefit in life. We develop habits so we can drive to work without even remembering to drive. You can almost, like, for most people that don't work at home, if they drive to work, most of them, like, kind of can glare out the window and not even realize that they're at work till they hit the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
We do things on autopilot. It's the same way with our habits of self-identity. Whatever we think of ourselves, until those moments when it's new, we don't notice that's how we think of ourselves. So if somebody's been thinking of themselves as a bad student since fourth grade, by the time they get to college, if they get there, they think they're struggling because it's who they are. When in
Yes.
reality, they're struggling because of the habits. It's just habits.
Mm.
So if you decide instead of, and I make it sound easy, it's certainly not easy. It is a process, but it is a process that can happen in a day. Like you can choose to decide you are something different in a day, and then you can work your way into catching up with it. When I decided to be a podcaster, and Ashley, when you decided to be a podcaster, when you made that choice, you know what the heck you were doing, but it was something you decided to
Yep.
be, and you figured it out.
Yep.
Same thing. I just wrote a book. I was never an author before. So I could have easily said, well, I would write a book, but I'm not an author. I'm like, well, yeah, nobody is until you don't become you don't just become an author, without writing the book. You have to make the decision before you can go through the process. And life is the same way. Health is the same way. Our education is the same way. Like I decided that years ago that I'm a lifelong learner. So, and that made getting through school so much easier. I just decided it that
Mm.
I'm going to be I'm going to be learning for the rest of my life, and I love the opportunity to do it. I had a blast in grad school. I just finished last year. It's not like this was 20 years ago. I went back to grad school a couple of years ago, and I had a blast because it was part of my identity. It's who I had chosen to be. And when we embrace that identity and recognize that, very quickly it becomes something that happens without us thinking about it. That's what's really important to remember. Whatever your identity is, there comes a point where you're just doing it without thinking about it, and it's that is a phenomenal. Well, it can be a good or bad thing, because the downside of that is if someone is not remaining aware of who they are identifying themselves as in these different contexts, whether it's school or in their relationship at home or at work, if they're not paying attention to it, then they're going to randomly fall into a certain identity based on whatever's happening to and around them, and they'll just stumble into a groove somewhere, and that's where they'll stay. But the good thing is, when you decide who you want to be in those contexts, I'm a husband who loves his wife no matter what. When that becomes a chosen identity, or if you decide I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a keynote speaker no matter what. Even if when somebody decides that, they'll start taking actions towards that. And yeah, the first few speeches might be scary. The first 100 speeches might be scary. And I guarantee you, most public speakers will tell you they're still, I don't want to curse on your show, they're still scared as heck before they go on stage. And you know what's funny? I still I can't say I'm scared, but I feel the same sensations as I did back when I used to be scared of public speaking, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the physical sensations are the same, but my interpretation of it is different. Now I say I'm so juiced
Yeah.
to get on this stage. I'm like, the last speech I did a couple weeks ago, and I called my wife. I said, okay, I got to go. Like, I'm juiced. I'm ready to go, and let's do this. Well, what did I have? I had sweaty palms. My deodorant was working overtime. um, I dried off my bald head a couple times to make sure my I didn't glow in front of the crowd. And but I could have easily, by looking at my physical reaction to what I was about to do, I could have easily said I was terrified. I'm
Mm-hmm.
terrified and I can't do this. I certainly could have said that. I had the physical things going on that could back it up, and probably somebody could say, "Oh, well, just don't do it then." No, I chose a different identity. I'm a speaker. So when if I'm getting sweaty and sweaty palms and my heart's beating a mile a minute before I get on stage, it's not because I'm scared. It's because I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that
Right.
decision to choose that interpretation, and in conjunction with the chosen identity, that makes all the difference. We make our own stories. We truly do.
We
We
make our
certainly,
own stories. I love that.
yeah,
Because you have this exact same sensation. Fear and excitement can be the same sensations in
yes,
the body, but it is your judgment
Yep.
of that sensation.
Yep. How are you describing it?
Yep.
It's the answer to your question. What is this I'm feeling? Well, choose. Is it excitement or is it terror? I choose excitement, and that's what I
I
get.
love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So that student who has been identifying as a bad student their whole life
Yeah.
chooses one night. He goes, you know
Hmm.
what? Tomorrow I'm waking up a+ student, and he
Yeah.
wakes up that morning and goes, well, what would an A+ student eat? And
Yes.
and so he goes, okay, well, I'm not going to eat the Fruit Loops.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have some protein smoothie or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Okay, what is? And then he goes, well, what does an A+ student do in the morning before school? Well, he
Hmm.
reads. Okay, I'm gonna read, and then he just goes through his day and asks
Yeah.
himself every step of the way. Well,
Yes.
for lunch, what does an A+ student do? Well, okay, I'm gonna walk over the A+ students and observe them. This is part of NLP, neuro linguistic programming,
Yeah.
where we
Yeah.
look to model someone of excellence.
Yes.
So not don't like directly copy them, but like go model
Hmm.
them, look at their behaviors throughout the day and see what are the
Yeah.
behaviors that are making the difference. And they're
Sure.
called drivers. Like, what are the
Yep.
drivers, what are the behaviors that actually result in an A+ student?
Hmm.
And so you can see a commonality. Some A+ students might like bring a troll doll to their tests because they think it gives them luck. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily a driver, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the actions of like all A+ students maybe read more, all A+
Hmm.
students maybe get more sleep, all A+ students maybe eat less sugar. Like, we would just look at the all the behaviors and then adapt our behavior to be that A+ student. And then
Yep.
and then again, it's part of that tacking, which is a terminology when you sail.
Yep.
You never go in a straight line in life. So you start, like, let's say for a month, this person has now transformed their life. Now they're doing all the behaviors they think an A+ student would do,
Hmm.
and now the test is coming up and they get a B, and they go, okay, they could sit there and beat themselves up and revert back to that old belief system about how they're a failure. Or they could go, hey, this is great feedback. It's
Yep.
working. It's
Yeah.
working. It's something's clearly working. Now, do I just stay the course, or do I need to
Adjust.
adjust? Do I need to
Yeah.
add more? Like, what's going on? So life is feedback, and we get the feedback, and then we need to adjust or keep the course, because maybe we just need to apply like what we're doing longer. Like you said, we get kind of
Hmm.
impatient after like dieting for an afternoon. I've done that.
Yeah.
I seriously have done a diet for 12 hours and then like give it like been like, screw this, I didn't lose a pound already.
Yeah.
I think we should
Yeah.
start when we diet, we should start counting the ounces we've lost, because it sounds really impressive. I lost 8 ounces this week. You're like, that
That's
sounds
pretty
really
good.
impressive, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to like half a pound, which kind of deflates us. But I love it. So really looking at what we actually consider our identity, and then
Yeah.
shifting our identity, and then asking ourselves the questions. Well, what if I was so now I'm this identity, what does this person eat for breakfast? What does this person do? How does this person think?
Yeah.
What does this person think about themselves and others? What does this person say, as this identity? And I know this sort of relates to the fake it till you make it thing, but for what you're describing, it's the pathway to shift our belief system from a negative to a positive, and
Yep.
shift our habitual behaviors into ones that help us to get the result we want.
Yeah. And it lets us choose what we need to learn. It lets us find
Mm.
finally what we need to learn, what we need to do differently. I love that you brought up the fake it till you make it, because I've had that kind of thrown back at me sometimes when I bring this up. And I'm like, you don't have to fake anything till you make it. You choose it and then make it.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Like, you don't like. I mean, think about it. It's simply, and you obviously you brought up NLP. It's like a recipe. When you
Mm,
choose that if you choose that you're going to make something, if you choose to make a cake, what are you going to do? You're going to find out what you need to make a cake.
right.
If you've never done it before, okay, let's get the ingredients. So if whatever you want to be, if you want to be a successful student, if you want to be an A student, you want to be a lifelong learner, okay, what are the recipe? What's the recipe for that? What ingredients go
Mm,
into the daily habits of someone who is that? The information. This is this time in history, not to get all dramatic about it, there's no better time in history to be whoever you want to be than now,
Mm.
because we have almost literally unlimited information. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's not many questions. I mean, other than can I fly without an airplane or something. I mean, but the things that we want to do, whether it's being a better student, parent, uh, better worker, entrepreneur, whatever it is that we want to do, there is information that can help you do it. And we can put it to use. And like you said, not to be copying what someone else is doing, but looking and say, okay, what has worked for someone else? And then how can I implement that? In what way can I use it for what I want to accomplish?
Right.
And there'll be things that you try and like, things that you try and don't like. That's part of the journey. It's part of the process. And it's part of remembering those values, such as patience.
I love it. Okay, so have patience for ourselves. Obviously, have love for ourselves. How do we
Yeah.
have curiosity? Is that in the questioning, like you said, if I
Yeah.
decide I'm going to be a runner, okay, my identity is a runner. What does a runner eat for breakfast? What does a runner
Sure.
wear? When does a runner run?
Yeah.
What does a runner do in the morning or in the evening? So
Yeah.
those is that the curiosity you mean?
Yeah. The curiosity is I love I like to talk about it like childlike curiosity. It's something I learned when I went through an LMP course myself years ago. And one of the things that stuck was the instructor talking about childlike curiosity, like just being innocently curious and saying, okay, what does this do and how could this work? Like when I started running,
Yes.
when I was training for my half marathon, I knew nothing about running other than, I knew I needed some good sneakers and I knew it was going to be pretty far when I finally did this thing. Everything else I had to learn. I talked to other runners, other marathoners. I wound up finding out friends that I knew for years that I didn't realize were runners and marathoners were, and I learned from them. Read articles on posture and the best shoes and all these little things that I just didn't know, and I just stayed curious to find out what would help me do what it was I wanted to, what would help me be who it was I wanted to be. Who was it? What's going to help me be who I chose to be? And having that curiosity to constantly be asking, what else? What else could I use? What else could I use to what else could I leverage to be this person? And that constant always being on the lookout for who it is you are, it's you wind up having answers pop up in your life that you just wouldn't even have noticed until you decided to be who you were. And you start finding evidence of your decision. It's like when you go, the old analogy, when you decide on a car you want to buy or that pair of shoes that you want, what do you start seeing everywhere?
Yep.
Those things you chose to buy. I mean, it's happened to
Mm-hmm.
me so many times, with cars and houses or this or that, whatever it is. Once you decide on something, it starts popping up everywhere. So when you decide on who it is you want to be, the resources to be that start
Mm.
exposing themselves to you.
Do you know
Uh,
there's a part of the
yeah,
brain that does that actually? It's called the
sure.
reticular
Reticular
activating
activating
system.
system. Yep.
Yes.
RAS. Yeah.
Isn't that
And
cool?
it is so cool and it is so true, which is why, but the decisions we make are compounding because
Mm-hmm.
it's choosing which slide to go down or which ski slope to go down. Are you doing a black diamond or, you know, or are you going down the wrong side of the mountain where all the rocks are? Or are you going down the fun side of the mountain where all the skiers are? It's choice. So whichever identity we choose for ourselves, whether it's to be that, I'm a bad student and I can't pass anything, or I'm a lifelong learner, I'm an A student, whichever one we choose, we're gonna find, that's what people need to understand. Whichever one you choose, whatever identity you choose, you will find evidence to support it. You'll find that's part of human nature. Whatever we choose, we will find evidence to support what we choose. And that is a critical piece of truth for all of us to remember.
I love it. You're giving so much gold today. It's really amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just out of curiosity, who did you
Yeah.
study NLP from?
Oh gosh. David Key.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. David Key.
Um,
Okay.
I studied with Tad James of no relation.
Okay.
I know it's the same last name. Um, and it's always fun to hear who people study from because
Yeah.
it's actually a really small community, believe it or not. I know
It is.
NLP is amazing. I think everyone should study it. It's understanding how we think. It's like it's the
Yeah.
manual that we it should have been handed to us when we were born. Like
Yeah.
here, this is how we work, how the
So
brain
many great
works,
tools. Yeah,
right?
there's so many great tools in NLP. I love it. It is so much, and it's fun to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It really is. I do recommend it to everyone. I know it's not that popular now, and a lot of people. It's funny. I always say people that knock NLP as being fake are the people who have never implemented NLP to make it real.
Yeah.
It's it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, and I'm of the mindset. I'm one of those people that, in anything, any tool, any what's the word I'm looking for? In any practice that you can adopt, I'm always on the lookout, and it goes back to curiosity. I'm always on the lookout what works with this. And NLP is one of those things that when I got curious about it and I decided to dive into it, I just found so many things like one after the other
Mm-hmm.
that just worked great. And I'm like, why is everyone not learning this?
I
It's almost like I'm
know.
looking around. I'm like, what's wrong with you people? This is awesome.
Right?
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah,
Kind of like my podcast. I have a lot of our listeners kind of go like, why doesn't everyone want to learn all this health information? Like this
yeah,
is changing my life.
yeah,
Why doesn't everyone want to eat healthy and feel amazing?
yeah. It's so true.
It's funny. We're just early adapters, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's cool. We get to share.
Let's jump into your 4 laws of pure success.
Yes, yes, yeah. We'll jump into that now. It's funny. Well, this will. I'll set this up sort of to put it in context. This is one of those things that I kind of built without realizing I was building it. And relax, it's not that complex at all. But over the years, through both of my careers, both in law enforcement leadership, and in my, when I started this world of personal growth and development years ago, I started trying to find patterns to make life simple. I love doing things to make life simpler. So if I can find a pattern somewhere, I will. And this is something that I built and just I tested for years, and I changed a lot of things, and I wanted to have a simple set of rules that no matter who you were and what it is you were trying to do, it would be applicable to almost making it impossible not to succeed. So that's why I call it the four laws of pure success, because that's what it is. There are 4 things that if we do them and if we practice them as habit, whether we're that person wanting to lose the weight or we're that student, whatever it is, it'll make our success so much more likely, and it'll get us through those moments where we're thinking something might not be working. So I'll jump into the first one real quick. The PURE is the acronym, P-U-R-E. It's the acronym for these 4 little laws that we're going to talk about. The first one is what I call the pivotal choice. That's the letter P. And that pivotal choice is simply to be 100% responsible for every situation that occurs in our life or business. And I call it pivotal choice because if you picture somebody pivoting, going from one direction to the next, if people that decide not to adopt this as a mindset, this mindset of 100% responsibility, their life will turn out one way. And the people that do choose to be 100, to just consider themselves, just to act as if, to use the NLP term, to act as if they are 100% responsible for everything that goes on in their life, their life turns out in a completely different way. And here's why I need to specify something really important. When we're saying 100% responsible, what I'm not saying is 100% to blame. Because we're not. I think I told the story in our last interview, Ashley, about my house got hit with all those trees, and The trees came crashing through my house on this freak storm back in 2012. I certainly wasn't to blame for those trees falling into my house. We had 4 trees fall on our property, did 100 and some odd $1,000 worth of damage, and it certainly wasn't my fault. But even in that situation, I had decided years before that as a way of life, I'm going to act as if I'm 100% responsible for what happens. So, in other words, even though I wasn't to blame for my house getting destroyed, I was completely responsible for what happened next.
Yes.
That's where the
Yes.
responsibility comes in, and it's important to say that because Ashley, you and I both know we could probably rattle off countless stories of people who have had horrific tragedies come into their life. Things have happened to them, and they're certainly not even remotely to blame for those things happening. But what all of us are is 100% responsible for deciding, okay, this has happened. Didn't see that coming, but I'm 100% responsible for what I do now. I'm responsible for my emotional reaction. I'm responsible for my plan of action afterwards, the thoughts that go through my head. I'm responsible for my interpretation of this event. Is this a horrific tragedy for me, or is this an opportunity for me to do something, get through something, inspire someone, or achieve something that before this happened I would have thought was impossible? And to use a simple case of my house getting smashed up, that's what we did. We chose a story of gratitude because when the trees came through, crashing through the roof, crashed through our kitchen where my wife and I would have been sitting on, it was a Friday night when it happened. Almost every other Friday night before then, we're at that table drinking wine, talking about the week. And by happenstance, we just so happened not to be home that night because a friend of mine called me to go to a baseball game and my wife left with the family to go to the mall. So even in that moment when I certainly wasn't responsible for what happened, I chose to act as if, yeah, this is on me. So we get to choose. What are we going to do with this? And we chose a story of gratitude. We chose to just take one step at a time, and we got through it. And the problem is this: if we allow ourselves to say, because I've had someone say, all right, I'll meet you at 99%, but there's just some stuff I can't deal with. It's just not my fault. But by human nature, how would we interpret our responsibility when we need it the most? We're going to find our out whenever we can. So in the case, when my house got hit by those trees, that certainly would have been, if I had chosen to be 99% responsible for my reactions and my circumstances, that would have been my 1% to say, well, this isn't my fault and this is BS, and I could have just had a meltdown because our house was wrecked and we got displaced. But there's just something powerful about just choosing as a way of life. No matter what happens, it's on me to resolve this, to deal with this, and to react to it in a way that's consistent with my values and the person that I'm choosing to be. So in the case of the weight loss, we kind of had that discussion earlier, how we can be 100% responsible for how much weight we are or aren't losing and what results we're getting from our nutritional and exercise decisions. So that's the P in the pivotal choice. That is the first rule of unbreakable success: is we have to decide we're responsible. Because by the way, if we break that word responsible into its parts, response simply means that we're responding with our thoughts, words, or actions. And the suffix, that ible in responsible, it comes from a Latin term that just means capable or worthy of. So all we're saying with this first rule is, by saying we're 100% responsible, all we're saying is I am 100% capable and worthy of responding to any situation with my thoughts, words, and actions. That's all it means.
That's
100%
powerful.
responsible does not mean I'm totally to blame. It means I am capable and worthy of dealing with anything. That's the magic. that is the magic sauce. I could stop there, and I can tell you flat out that's my life changed after I decided that. If I'd done nothing else, if I'd learned nothing else after I'd made that decision, that alone was life changing for me. Because never again, and I mean this with complete humility, I decided never again was I blaming somebody else for anything that happened in my life. Because that would have been saying that I'm not capable and I'm not worthy, which would have been BS. Because I am. All of us are. So that is the letter P in pure success. The U is for unconditionally high standards, and I think we touched on this last time. But I'll run it down again. One of the coolest things I heard, one of the earliest pieces of self-help isms I had ever heard was from Tony Robbins when I first started reading and listening to these personal development speakers and people that really just got me thinking outside of my norm. And one of the things that just jumped in my head from Tony was when the first time I heard him say that our quality of life is, if we want to change the quality of our life, we have to change our standards. And it was so true. And I was like, wow, that just makes sense. Like, we got to change our standards of who we are, what we're going to tolerate, what we're not going to tolerate. But I found something that was missing from, not that he was wrong about what he was saying, but I saw something that was happening even with people, phenomenal people that had the best intentions, and they were really raising their standards and they wanted to be better at who they were being, whether they were moms, dads, employees, leaders, executives, you name it. What was happening was they would set these really high standards, and when life was going right, man, they were crushing it. They were just doing phenomenal. But for most of us, it's relatively easy to keep those high standards. Once we decide on them, it's relatively easy to live up to them when everything's going right. The problem is, a lot of times, for a lot of people, those standards are conditional. And what I mean by that is, if something goes wrong, meaning somebody says the wrong thing, somebody doesn't do what you thought they were supposed to do, somebody broke a promise, things are going wrong, business is leaving, the stock's going down, we're not losing the weight fast enough. All of a sudden, when things are going wrong, and I think I joked last time, where nobody's impressed by the husband or wife that comes home from work and the house is clean and dinner is cooked and the kids are clean, and they brag about how wonderful their marriage is and how great a time they had with their spouse that night. What's impressive is when they come home and the house is just in complete shambles and the kids are still at the bus stop and there's nothing to eat. What's impressive is in that moment, when we have every single excuse in the book to lower our standards about who we're going to be and how we're going to treat people, that's when it matters. That's when it matters. And nobody gets a gold star for choosing a salad when they're out with their vegan friends. They get the gold star. They get the gold star when they go out to dinner with the steak eaters and they stick to their diet. When we have a reason not to maintain our standards, when we have an excuse to drop the standards that we've set for ourselves, that's when it matters the most. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure I spell that out for people so they understand what I'm getting. The standards you set don't matter. What matters is the standards you keep when you have an excuse not to.
I love it.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because that's what changes the course. Those are the life-altering moments when you're having that argument and you got an excuse to say the wrong thing, to say or do something that you shouldn't do. Where 10 minutes before, if you weren't so emotionally enraged, you would have never thought of doing or saying something. When you're able to pause in that moment when all hell, for lack of a better word, is breaking loose, and still maintain your poise and take that deep breath and decide decide to ask in what we're gonna learn in the next step, what would the best version of me do right now, and decide to hold on to those standards even when you think you don't have to. That's what changes your life. That's what completely alters the course of your life. It's being willing to maintain your high standards when you don't think when you think you do have an excuse not to. That's what changes everything. And when you do that repeatedly, it changes everything because people will remember. They'll remember. They'll remember what you did in the moment where you had an excuse not to live up to who you were supposed to be. So I want to jump into number three because that kind of the one leads into the other. Number three is the R in P.U.R.E for reflective comparison, and all that means is a lot of times people tend to, like we touched on it earlier, kind of compare themselves to somebody else or try to copy somebody else. I see this a lot in the entrepreneur world where people have these dreams of wanting to accomplish and grow their business to the scale of what this guy that has or this girl has, or they want to speak in as many countries as that person, and they're looking to them and thinking, why can't I do that? And it's just so disempowering. But the secret is what changes the game for us is if what we do, if we do what I call reflective comparison, which is simply the idea of looking in the mirror, which is why I call it reflective comparison, and just asking ourselves, what would I do if I had no flaws, no ego, no baggage, no alternate agenda, no self-doubt? What would I do if I couldn't get this wrong? What would I do next? When we're willing to ask a question as what sounds like completely unfair, if we're willing to ask that question, we have to hear an answer. Anytime, that's something we have to remember. Anytime we ask ourselves a question, we will come up with an answer. So that's why I always tell people, stop asking yourself, how come the weight is not coming off? Or, how come my husband is this? Or how come my wife is that? Those are disempowering questions. But this question of what would the best version of me do right now, as I'm looking in this mirror, if I was flawless, if I couldn't get it wrong, what would I do in any situation? We'll hear an answer in any context, whether it's that student who was struggling with their grades, whether it's that person that was trying to lose the weight. If we're willing to ask ourselves with complete humility, what would I do right now as my best self? If I couldn't get it wrong, what would be my next step? The answer has to show up. And that's the third law of pure success. The last one is very simple. I call it elevate your situational methodology, which is just a fancy way of saying kind of step up your habits. What I mean by that is when we're faced with any situation, whether it's business, school, health, parenting, most people do one of four things. They either simply do what's familiar to them, they hope, they believe, or they create. And if you look at that sort of as a ladder, with doing what's familiar, or looking at it as a pyramid, really, doing what's familiar is what most people do. That's at the base of the pyramid. It fits the bill for the broadest number of people. And the next step up, a lot of people tend to hope. And then there are some people, as the pyramid narrows out, that believe, but there are a lot less people who choose to create an outcome in any situation. And this goes back, these four laws kind of blend together, because if we go back to our talk about being 100% responsible, there are plenty of people who find themselves in situations that were not of their making, but if they choose to create something out of it, that will completely change their life. Those amazing people that are struck with an illness or a tragedy, or they lose somebody, and they decide that they're going to do something with it. Like they're actually going to make something bigger than them out of their situation. It always amazes me, and I tell people all the time, if people can do that in the face of tragedy, how can we dare not create something when we're having a bad day at work, or we had a meeting that annoyed us? Like, how do we dare have an excuse not to create something in these, by comparison, these minuscule situations that we deal with? And yes, our lives are our lives. They're important to us. But we have the ability to elevate the way that we deal with things. We don't always have to do just for what's familiar. And sure, we should all hope, because trust me, and we've all been there. Sometimes hope is all you have, but sometimes people use hope as a crutch, and they allow hope to become the reason they're not taking action because they're so busy hoping. And it sounds unfair, but I say it with love. Like we don't have to rely solely on hope. We can hope while we're believing, and we can hope while we're creating something, while we're taking some action. So, really elevating your situational methodology is just always looking for a way to create in any situation, create something, create an outcome, create an experience, create a better story, and create some better questions. Because when we're willing to do that, in conjunction with these other rules, it's life changing. So, staying 100% responsible for our actions, holding these unconditionally high standards, especially when we think we have an excuse not to, asking ourselves, doing that reflective comparison and asking ourselves, what would I do if I couldn't get it wrong? What would the best of me do right now if I dropped the ego, the baggage, the self-doubts? What would I do? And then deciding to create. By default, choosing to create an outcome in all of our situations. Those four laws combined are the habits that I've seen the most successful, the most fulfilled, the most endearing people that I've met and I've had the good fortune to meet over the years from so many different countries and so many different walks of life. Those are the patterns that I saw in them that were game changing for them. And some people, they had one of these qualities that was just standing out over the other. But over time, as I started putting these pieces together and trying to figure out, what is consistently working for people, no matter who they are and where they're from, it was these four things. And I adopted them, and I said, I got to share these. So that's where the four laws came from. Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. You gave us so much gold here today. I love the question, what would the best version of me do, or what would the best
Mm-hmm.
version of me do right now? Because I can even
Sure.
see, like, in moments that I'm really frustrated as a mom, I have a 3-year
Mm-hmm.
old, I can see myself like acting in a way that I know the best version of me wouldn't act.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to bring that
Yeah.
question to the situation the next time
Sure.
the
We
next time
need
my
that.
son who's being a 3-year-old.
We need that. I can tell you the most powerful tool to use and I say this as a parent, one of the most powerful tools we have in our tool belt is the pause. That 5 or 10 second pause, which opens a window for that question.
Mm-hmm.
One of the worst things I ever do is respond without allowing myself to stop and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Just that 5 second pause and a few deep breaths make it a lot easier to insert that question into those moments. So that's my little hack, is use the pause every chance you get, because we all have those moments.
Love it. Love it. Well, Aaron, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show again.
Yes,
And
yes. Thank you.
I'm really impressed with everything that you do and you teach. For those who didn't get a chance to listen to episode 260, could you let the listeners know how they can follow you? You've got a great podcast, and of course, my listeners love podcasts. So tell us a bit about your website and your podcast, and how can people work with you if they want to work with you or read your new book that's coming out?
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share that. Really easy to find. AaronKeithHawkins.com is my website. And from there, you can hit all three of those things. My podcast is called Unbreakable Success, so you can find that on iTunes. Just type Unbreakable Success, and it'll pop right up. On the website, if any one of your listeners wants to work with me, or even just have a conversation to see if they want to work with me and see if we vibe, if you go to AaronKeithHawkins.com, you'll see a few ways to get a hold of me. On the top left of my home screen is a phone number where you can literally text me 24/7. Just shoot me a text, call me, or leave me an email. That's also on the top left of my screen. get a hold of me and tell me a little about you, and I will respond. I respond to every message that comes through my site. Also, everybody who is listening, as you're listening right now, you can get a free copy of my book at aaronkeithhawkins.com. Just click, it's actually on my home screen right now, and it's probably going to be up there for a very long time. So regardless of when you're listening to this, if you go to my website, aaronkeithhawkins.com, you'll see the link to my book. It's called $1 Million Influence. And the book is the subtitle is How to Achieve Life-Changing Connection, Trust, and Impact in Your Business and Life. And I touched on it earlier, but the book is really about how to be an influencer, regardless of whether you're at home or you're at work. And if I had to sum it up, I would say it's about teaching influence in a way that completely flips the lid on how a lot of people look at influence. A lot of people look at influence from the context of being influential so they can get something. And that is completely wrong way to look at influence. Influence is about what you can give. And by giving, you impact on the character and behavior of someone else. If you look up the word influence in the Oxford English Dictionary, that's really what it's about. Influence is about impacting someone's behavior and character. It's not about taking. So the book is a step-by-step process to understand human behavior, understand the building blocks of influence, the common mistakes in influence. And then the last third of the book is really about the long game, about relationship building and simple steps you can make to really transform the way that you interact with your friends, family, colleagues, anyone in your life. And it is a culmination of the many lessons and certainly many mistakes I've learned over the years, and all the boring education and the books I've read. I've kind of just pieced everything together into a fun book full of stories and some research anecdotes and things of that sort. So please feel free to enjoy it and share it. You can, like I said, it's free. You can download it for free, and I welcome you to share it with anybody that's influenced you in your life, and just give them a little gift from you and me. So yeah, that's it. And the podcast is an interview-based podcast. Unbreakable Success is really, it's a lot like this, Ashley. I love doing interviews as well. Usually have people on that are entrepreneurs or have an entrepreneurial spirit, and we just get into learning about the amazing things that these entrepreneurs are doing. And we start with their backstory and lead into the work they're doing today, whether they're coaches, speakers, authors, experts in any field, and learn those golden nuggets of wisdom that they've found during their journey. And we share that with the listener, and it is always a lot of fun. So
I agree. That's probably one of my favorite types of interviews, obviously besides health, because I'm so into it. But for like over 8 years now, I have been a listener of Mixergy, which is Andrew Warner's podcast.
Yep.
And he interviews basically people that are people who've successfully created a startup, or been a founder, or CEOs, or entrepreneurs that really have made it, and then they come back and he grills them, and they teach. I mean, his interview style, I learned, actually, I took his course where when he led a course on how to interview, and so I took it and I love it. But he grills people, and I appreciate him for it, because he likes to get real information. He says that entrepreneurs sort of have a guard up, right? Whereas someone like you, or like a health expert, doesn't have their guard up. They're here to share. But entrepreneurs got their ego in the way, and they've got their guard up, and he's got to figure out how to like get through them. And so he would ask, he'd be like, oh, so it was really easy in the first year of your business. It must have been so easy for you to do it. And then they're like, are you kidding me? I was sleeping on a floor in the office and it was so hard. They wouldn't admit to the reality of, they wouldn't really tell the real story until he like basically manipulated his questions for them to kind of come out. And so he has a great technique for interviewing these high level entrepreneurs. But I've always enjoyed learning from entrepreneurs, because you have to constantly, I mean, if you want to succeed, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to dive into personal growth, at some point it becomes kind of a theme that entrepreneurs turn to health because they
Yeah.
realize that burning the candle at both ends, they're going to lose it.
Yep.
I saw this happen in both my parents. Both my parents, I was raised by entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
and both my parents successfully ran their own businesses like independently. They both had their own businesses, and they both had health challenges that they,
Mm.
had to figure out how to overcome, and how to set up their life in such a way that they would rest. And so we had a
Yeah.
cottage. They got a cottage, and no work was allowed at the cottage. And so they
Mm.
they would work themselves silly. And then Friday night we drove up to the cottage, and it was like mandatory like rest and relaxation till Sunday night, and then we drive back home. And that
Brilliant.
was their strategy, and my mom
Yeah.
exercised and we ate healthy. But if they she didn't exercise and didn't eat healthy and didn't go to the cottage and just worked, she wouldn't be able to work for months. She would
Yeah.
work herself into sickness. And so a lot of entrepreneurs end up turning to health, to figure out of a need to become more successful in their business, right? And so
Sure.
it's interesting how people will look to, when you learn from entrepreneurs, you end up learning what they learned along the
Yeah.
way. And so you end up
Yeah.
learning mind hacks and
Oh
health
yeah.
strategies, and you learn, mindset strategies, and also you learn how to do, maybe the sales and the marketing. And so you
Yeah.
get this really cool picture because it takes so much to run and launch and run a successful business.
Sure.
So I think that if someone might not be directly interested in business, they'd be interested in learning from your podcast, because I bet your podcast is, you're learning, when you learn from entrepreneurs, you're learning so much more than just business.
Oh yeah.
You're learning what it takes as a human to set a goal and then meet it.
Yeah. Yeah. We inevitably get on, every successful entrepreneur I have on the show, the conversation is always about mindset. I mean, we'll get into some strategy, and most of those things can be shared in relatively short term. But most of what we talk about has to do with our mindset and the challenges and how you can overcome and get around them. And I selfishly love people. I tell people openly, I'm I will selfishly admit that I love doing my show because I learn so much from the
Hmm.
guests I have on. We have so many fun people on the show, and I learn a ton. So yeah, it's a chance for me to learn from the people I have on the show and to share it with the listener. It's a win-win, that's for sure.
Absolutely, I feel the same way about my show. I feel so blessed to learn from so many amazing people. And I feel like I'm a fan of my own show. When someone writes me, I get fan mail all the time, and it's great. If any listener
Yeah.
wants to email me Ashley@learntoyourhealth.com. I love it. I love hearing from you guys. And I've actually collected a bunch of emails, and I've decided I'm going to record like independent episodes replying to people,
Nice.
so that
Great.
everyone can learn from my replies. But people say I'm a fan of your show. I'm like, me too. Like I feel like I'm sitting in the audience with them. I'm like, yeah, me
Yeah.
too, because I'm sitting here
Yeah.
learning from people. I'm like, I love this
Sure.
show. This is a great show. Not in like being egotistical, but I'm like a fan of this show called Learn Your Health. It's a lot of fun learning from these experts. And what a great strategy. I think, as a parent, it's really cool. Tell your children to go interview people. Like, it is
Oh
the
yeah.
such an amazing strategy for learning from people. Benjamin Franklin, as a child, his dad would bring home, they didn't really have traditional school back then, like the school we have
Hmm.
now, the Prussian education system, right? They didn't have like the 9 to 3
Yeah.
p.m. 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. school, like, so back then, a lot of kids were homeschooled, or they went to like a different kind of institution. It was not like what it is now. But
Sure.
Benjamin Franklin, as a child, his dad would bring home a new person every day for dinner, oftentimes someone that might have been homeless, so
Hmm.
that Benjamin could sit across the table and have them tell stories, and he could learn from them.
Brilliant. That is brilliant.
And by the time he was 12, he owned a business and actually had employees.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I just
Yeah,
think that's such
that's
a
pretty
cool
awesome.
strategy. Learning from the stories of other people and there's nothing quite like being an interviewer. You learn the
Yeah.
most.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. It's so much fun, and it's so fulfilling and gratifying to learn to because you get in that flow and you start just the information just comes out and you know it's being shared beyond you and it's a good feeling.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, it's been such a pleasure. Was there anything you'd like to say to wrap up today's interview?
Yeah, sure. I will say I will leave you, the listener, with this. Whatever it is that, because all of us have this, and that's why I feel comfortable saying this. Whatever that thing is that you may be thinking about, you want to accomplish, and a lot of times it's something that you haven't told anyone about. Because you'd be surprised, Ashley, how many times if you ask somebody, what's that thing that you haven't told anybody about that you want to accomplish, you'll find that most of the time, I'll say about 80 to 90% of the time, it's there and you'll hear about it. So, to you listening, whatever it is for you, please know that your greatest gift to yourself and the people you're around is to begin doing that thing and trust that you'll figure it out because you will, promise you. So just get started.
Nice. Love it. And get started by reading your book and listening to your podcast.
Sure, that's a great start. Thank you. I appreciate it. Happy to help anytime. Honestly, if anybody has any questions and wants to reach out to me, I am here. I will respond, and we will talk and chat. I promise you.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, I'd love to have you back on the show. This has been
Do it
such a
again.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming back and teaching us so much more. Everyone, you can go to aaronkeithhawkins.com or go to the show notes of today's podcast at learntrout.com, where all the links to everything that Aaron does, including his new book that he's giving to you for free, that just came out. You can get that all there in the show notes. It's been wonderful having you on the show again. I actually can't wait to share this episode with a lot of my friends and family because I think it was just filled with so much gold. I just can't wait for people to implement everything that you shared today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I mean it. Anytime you need me or want to chat, you know I'm here. So I'm happy to share with you. And thank you to the listener for hanging out with us. It's been a lot of fun.
Do you feel like you're missing something? Are you searching for the right answers to solve your health issues? Do you feel like you should have more energy and mental clarity? With everything you're doing for your health, you may be missing one key component. Our body needs 90 essential nutrients every day to function optimally. Because of the farming practices over the last 100 years, most of our food has 60% fewer vitamins and minerals compared to just 50 years ago. So if you aren't eating 8 cups of a variety of fruits and vegetables each day, you may be missing some of your essential nutrients. These are the raw building blocks the body needs to create new healthy tissue, healthy hormones, balanced digestive system, strong muscles, bones and joints, and maintain an optimal functioning nervous system. Especially if you're experiencing more stress or if you've gone through an illness like an infection, that takes more resources. So if you're not consuming more vitamin C and more of all the 16 vitamins and all the 60 minerals when you're going through more stress, either physical stress, emotional stress, mental stress, those stressors take more nutrients to kind of survive those bumps in the road in life. And over time, that whittles away, that kind of depletes our nutrient tanks, our stores in our body. Without these 90 essential nutrients, things start to break down. Now, you've experienced these breakdowns. Maybe you get migraines, maybe you're exhausted, maybe your hormones are out of balance, your digestion's out of balance, or you have some aches and pains. Maybe you've even been diagnosed with something. You have a series of symptoms, and if those symptoms all look like something, then we can diagnose it, right? That's what MDs can do. MDs will treat these breakdowns with drugs and mask your symptoms. But if your body has a nutrient deficiency, no amount of drugs will fix the problem. 7 years ago, I embarked on a journey to cure my diabetes, infertility, PCOS, high blood pressure, and chronic adrenal fatigue. I felt like I was a mess. Through my research, I found a company that made natural supplements to address these nutrient needs. They formulated their supplements to exceed all standards of quality. Their minerals are the most bioavailable and absorbed by the body that I have ever found. After getting on their protocols for healthy hormones and blood sugar, along with their dietary recommendations for better health, I reversed my type 2 diabetes. I reversed my infertility. I no longer had high blood pressure. My energy and vitality came back. And after 6 years of trying to get pregnant with my husband before we found these supplements, once we got on these supplements, we were able to conceive our wonderful, healthy son, who's now 3 years old, and he is amazing. And we would have never had that had we not found this company. Speaking of our son, he's also taking these supplements for optimal health. His pediatrician thinks they're amazing. If you'd like to give these supplements a try and see for yourself if you're experiencing a nutrient deficiency, please go to takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Their health coaches are phenomenal. I personally know all of them. They're amazing people. And I just want you to know, as my listener, I feel like I need to protect my listeners. I would never promote anything that I didn't 100% believe in and I didn't feel was healthy or good for you. I feel like you're my tribe, and I'm sharing this information. In fact, for the last 2 years, the only reason why I've been doing this podcast is so that I can help as many people as possible gain their health back. And so the health coaches at takeyoursupplements.com, I really trust that they will make sure that you're well taken care of. They will work with you to help determine the best protocol for your nutrient needs and work within your budget. They will also help to implement a holistic protocol that includes supporting a healthy diet and lifestyle. Go to takeyoursupplements.com, fill out the form, and one of their health coaches will get back to you really shortly. And then you guys can schedule a time to talk on the phone, and they will work with you to help you dial in all your nutrient needs. I really look forward to hearing about your experience with them. Please feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me in our Facebook group. Go to Facebook, search Learn True Health, and join our group. Let me know what you think about the wonderful health coaches at takeyoursupplements.com. And by the way, when you go to takeyoursupplements.com and you get assigned to a health coach, they're your health coach. You're not going to keep getting a different person every time. You get one person, and they work with you and they hold your hand. For months down the road. They're there for you to support you month after month while you're on your nutrient protocol, and they're helping you dial in your nutrient needs. They're really wonderful like that. So I know you'll enjoy your experience with them, and I'd love to hear about your experience with them. Please feel free to, you can email me as well, ashley@learntruehealth.com. I love hearing success stories. Like I said, I've been working with a supplement company for my own health for the last 7 years, and I've reversed so many issues. I love sharing this information because I think that many of you will be able to resolve your issues with nutrition, just like I've seen many people do. With that said, go to takeyoursupplements.com, fill out your information, and a health coach is very excited to start working with you and helping you get your health back.